Our human experience is all about connection, and it's all about our emotions. That is the magnificence of human beings. It's the beautiful part of our lives, and it's just such a shame when we shut ourselves off to our hearts and like what we feel, because it's when we guard and protect ourselves, we are blocking ourselves from the blessings as well. Like, blocking yourself from like ever getting hurt again blocks you from ever loving deeply again. And then if you do find love or a connection that is meaningful to you, but you're also still guarded and walled up because you don't want to get heartbroken, then is that person ever really seeing the real you? Are you ever feeling like, if we're guarded, if we can't be honest and authentic and raw and vulnerable in the moments that is necessary with, you know, someone that we're interested in or someone that we've been with for a while, like, are we ever feeling like we're fully seen, and if we're fully understood? And if we're not feeling those things, then how can we feel loved for who we are? We're not. And I think that a lot of us, you know, when we meet somebody, we might have been our true authentic self when we first met, but things happen, you know, like life gets crazy and we start becoming fearful of, like, or ashamed or something, you know, like we don't, you know, like, human beings are capable of doing absolutely anything, like, whether we want to admit that or not. And I'm like, probably the most famous example is just, you know, would a person commit murder? I would say no. I probably wouldn't want to murder somebody. But, you know, given the right circumstances, I could and would, you know? And it's just like, it requires very desperate times, like, which happens. We don't know ourselves as well as we think until crisis happens, and financial problems, and when we're terrified of something. We don't know who we'll be in moments that we face those things. And then we do something to survive or protect ourselves. And then we bury it because we're ashamed of it. And we don't even want to look at ourselves that way, that, like, because the longer we hide something from everyone else, I mean, there are things that, like, our best friends don't know, or our families don't know, or our partner for like 20 years doesn't know. Like, we all have things that we have never shared with anybody, and that's probably the closest thing to a fact. But it's that guilt and that shame that eats us alive, and it gets buried in our bodies for years, and we don't think so. We don't think that that's what happens, but it does. And then you'll probably notice over time we develop a habit. We develop something new inside of our routine that, like, we didn't actually pay attention to, like, when that thing started, why we started, you know, procrastinating, or why we started, you know, like, stopping at a bar before going home, or like why we feel like we can't even communicate with our partners anymore without being under the influence of some sort. We don't connect those dots, although we know within ourselves, if we gave ourselves a moment to connect those dots, to really figure out why that started and why we started doing that, we would know. We would know. But the longer we hide the truth and our secrets from the ones we love, we're able to hide it from ourselves too. And we don't have to look at ourselves in that way because no one else sees us in that way. And, you know, you notice like that there's people we are around, whether that be at work or our friend groups or like, you know, just our families or, you know, our CrossFit buddies, whatever, like we're different with everyone, which is normal. That's very normal. But I think it has everything to do with how the people around us are viewing us. That gives us this different persona. You know, if we're around people who are very judgmental, then we're not gonna be, we're gonna like shield off a little bit, you know, like they definitely wouldn't be the people that we would tell our secrets to. Our church buddies, we're definitely not going to tell them that we cheated on our partners. Like, so the longer that we can keep our secrets and our shameful experiences and things like that from everyone else, then we do not have to see ourselves that way. And it works. It works. I know I've done it. And it's like the moment the cat is out of the bag, the moment you tell one person, it's enough. Because now you're faced with like, you're being seen for this thing you've done. And no one had ever seen you that way. And it's very easy to pretend that it didn't happen when no one knows you to have done that. So it's a very big thing. It's a big deal. It takes a lot of courage, and you don't have to tell everybody your deepest, darkest secrets by any means, but like, do you have one person? Do you have one person? Is it your partner, your romantic relationship, who you can be your most raw, vulnerable, open, like your most raw and vulnerable self with? And if it's not, how often do you check in with like how connected you feel with your partner? And if you feel like y'all struggle with connection, I promise it's not about connection with your partner, it's connection with yourself. And if you are wanting to reconnect or build a new connection, it takes speaking up about things that you might have felt ashamed about. You know, there's no way that we can feel loved if they don't know who we are. Not that like the bad, like anything like bad that we've ever done, it like is what creates us, but like the big experiences that have like impacted our emotions. I mean, I don't know, like some traumatic moments, I wouldn't call them, they don't just sit in you as wounds that are like able to heal. I think that they're battle scars, and they're like, we know which ones those are. And it's not about like repeating our past stories and like, you know, being the victim of anything. It's just a part of you. It is part of your body, and it's not going to go anywhere. But how you talk about it and how you've healed it, which really just takes a different perspective of why things happened and a different perspective of how things happened, is the healing journey. It's just a changing your perspective on something, which it's actually rather simple, but it's not the easiest thing. It's just a change in perspective. So, you know, our beliefs, it takes challenging our beliefs a little bit. What are we telling ourselves is the absolute truth of anything? Almost nothing is the absolute truth. And how we feel about ourselves sometimes is not, it doesn't have to stay there, and it's not the absolute truth. And I think it's beautiful to allow yourself to see yourself not as like a bad person for having to do what you did to protect yourself or to like survive, but see yourself as like a warrior, and you did it to survive and you did it to protect something, and it's honorable. But the more you hide it, the more you don't see yourself that way. And when someone else can see the artistic perspective of it, it's beautiful. And that's connection. And the people who don't see that perspective, they're meant to fall away. And I know that's a hard thing, but like, or let's say if they can't fall away, if they're just like stuck with you forever, like family or something, at least allow yourself to welcome in the people who would see or understand and think it's beautiful, because that does exist. And we've all done bad things, we've all done shameful things, and the moment somebody is willing to own it and like speak up about it, there's always someone else in the same room who can relate and share a story as well. And it's not going to be the exact same story, but it will be the same emotional experience, and that is something that we can always count on. That's where we relate to one another. It's the emotional experience of things. They don't have to go through exactly what we went through. Like that's almost, that part sometimes doesn't even matter, because somebody could have experienced something that was very, very hard and like painful for you, and they could have dealt with it in a very like different way, to where they saw like the magic of this bad experience and like did something entirely different with it, and it didn't actually like wound them. It's entirely based on our perspectives of things. And it's important to you know, challenge your beliefs sometimes, and like don't see your beliefs as facts of anything, even our own memories of things. It's not fact. It's not fact. Because even when we experienced this one thing that we think happened exactly the way that our memories stored it to have happened, it had everything to do with our own internal state during that time. It had everything to do with just how we were already feeling that day. It had to do with our childhood. It had to do with what our parents told us about ourselves, and like, you know, you can always change you can change the way you look at any experience. But it comes from changing your beliefs, or just entertaining the idea, the thought that you can adjust your beliefs, even if it's just for a moment, even if it's just to entertain something. And if you have a hard time with that, I think it's worth looking into. What feels scary about that? And always know it's a fear. What feels so scary about that? Are you always afraid of like feeling like you were, you know, like you weren't seeing the bigger picture of things? Are you always afraid to be wrong? And why? What would that mean? Does that mean that you are a dumb little boy? What does that mean to you to be misinformed or, you know, wrong about something? What does it remind you of? What does it feel like? And at what age? What age are you that you're feeling these things? What age? What do you envision? They're flashes in your mind. They're flashes of memories and thoughts, and we don't catch them. But those are where everything lies, and that's where we are able to, you know, pinpointing those things actually does help you see that what you've been believing about yourself and about reality and everyone else, whatever you believe about love and like just anything, that it actually is not the absolute truth when you can pinpoint where it comes from. And people are terrified of doing that. And it's like, why? Now ask yourself, why is that scary? To like, the more we're clear about these things, the more you actually see where you can unravel this stuff and like reprogram your own brain. It's really just a matter of like asking yourself why. Why is this difficult for you? Why do you believe this? When did that belief get started? What do you imagine in your mind when you hear this word? When you like question this, when you feel wrong about something? What is the narrative happening in your mind? Acknowledge your own thoughts. Like, that does quite a bit for you. And you don't necessarily need to spend all this money in therapy to like figure these things out. You have the answers all within you. And I know people like say that about a lot of things, and I know that's frustrating to hear, but like, we do know the answers to these things. We don't need to like do a whole bunch of like past trauma healing work, you know, like, because sometimes when we do that, I know from my own experience with therapy, it's like, we don't always know where to begin. So then we just begin somewhere, and then we like backtrack slowly, and it's like, geez, like that's just like a fuck ton of work, and people kind of like lose their motivation to even do that, because that does take a lot of money, and that does take a lot of time, and it takes a lot of work. And then you really see things as like, man, I'm fucked up. I mean, not always. Like, sometimes it is useful for people, but I do think that if you are being honest with yourself, why are you in there? Why are you getting therapy? What do you fear? And when do you think it started? And what repeating cycles do you keep experiencing? Because that is also where answers lie. You'll be ahead of the game. And anyway, I think that, like, you know, questioning our beliefs and our thoughts, and just entertaining the idea that like none of it is the absolute truth. And can you easily do that? Assume everyone's wrong and everyone's right. It's powerful, man.